Chair, members, and all our guests present. Thank you.
Mr. Koza?
Morning, Chair. Morning to our members and present.
Mr. Mndluli?
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm present.
Mr. Nkosi? Ms. Nkosi?
Morning, Chair. Morning and present. Thanks.
Ms. Schlauser-Webster?
Morning, everybody, and morning to our guests this morning.
Those are all members on the platform at the moment. I may have missed somebody or may have joined while I was doing this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. As you know, we have lost one of our members, Honorable Nchingila, and the details have been shared, and I will not repeat. I would like us to just take a moment of silence in his remembrance. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. May his soul rest in peace. I hope that we will do necessary follow-up administratively through the team to make sure that we honor one of our own. He made a good contribution to the committee. I now want to move to the agenda. Thank you very much, colleagues. The agenda is before us. Can I get the mover and seconder for the agenda?
I move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Gigaba moves. Seconder.
I second.
Thank you very much, Member Webster. Webster moves. Thank you, second. Thank you very much. The agenda has been adopted. Are there any apologies, Andra?
Chair, we received an apology of Mr. Chance, who's attending a SCOPA meeting this morning, Chair. Those are only the ones I've received. Others may still join us, Chair, and I will keep you posted if I receive any apologies. Thanks.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I do not have a list who's leading the delegation from DTIC and Finance. If you can just clarify me.
Deputy Minister Abrams is on the platform leading the delegation for DTIC. DDG Axelson is leading delegation from National Treasury. And I don't see the colleagues from Western Cape on the platform yet, but there is one colleague on the platform, Colonel Abrams. So at the moment, he's leading the Western Cape delegation until everybody's on the platform, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let me welcome the three leaders, the Deputy Minister, the DDG, and the colleague from the Western Cape. Thank you very much for honoring this meeting. And I'm sure as and when others are joining, you'll inform us so that we're able to also acknowledge them. As a follow-up to the committee's oversight visit to the Western Cape in October 2025, the committee has invited the National Treasury, the Western Cape government, to continue the discussion on the challenges affecting the development and sustainability of the Atlantis and Freeport Saldanha SEZ. Whilst the committee recognizes that the DTIC is responsible for overarching policy on SEZ, National Treasury and the Western Cape government plays an important role in this regard. Today, we are going to be receiving a briefing by the DTIC, which will provide us an overview of the SEZ program, and as well as deal with the challenges that were raised during the oversight visit, and provide some of the proposal on how to address some of these issues. Secondly, we will receive a presentation from National Treasury, as well as South African Revenue Services, have been requested to address the following issues: clarify the role in the process of approval and implementation of the SEZ in relation to the tax incentive. This should include any legislative or procedural requirement. Secondly, how the SEZ currently have access to these tax incentives. And then thirdly, does the Minister of Finance intend to grant approval for any new SEZ to qualify for these tax incentives? And fourthly, given the SEZ tax incentives are set to expire in 2031, what is the Minister of Finance intention with regards to the extension of the tax incentives? And the other question is, what is the implication for the expiration of the new date, especially as it relates to the new investors where SEZ has attained approval for these incentives. In other words, the new investors in all these SEZ are eligible to apply for the tax incentives, and up to when will this incentive be available? With regard to the Western Cape colleagues, in terms of the Atlantis SEZ, the department's contribution and responsibility in relation to the funding of bulk infrastructure. Second, in terms of the Freeport Saldanha, the provincial government intention to withdraw its financial support for the operation of the SEZ, attempting and how are you attempting to resolve these challenges? I will now revert back to the agenda, Andre, if we don't mind, just to make sure that the first presentation will come from the TTIC. It will be followed by National Treasury, and the Western Cape will be number last, as according to the allocated time period for all the three. I see, Andre, we didn't break the time.
Correct, Chair, because because there will be a consolidation by Western Cape in the presentation.
Literally it's about 30 minutes each from what I'm looking at here. Past 9, 30 minutes each. So let's start now. Over to you, DM, and the delegation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. And first, let me offer my condolences to you, the Portfolio Committee, and the family of the Honorable Member who passed. May his soul rest in peace. I'd also just like to welcome the stakeholders present here today, and then also choose to thank the Honorable Members for conducting the oversight at the Atlantis SEZ and the Saldanha Freeport IDZ. I too have had the opportunity to visit both, and I shared similar concerns that the members had raised and what the Honourable Chairperson included in his letter to the Minister, but I'll leave those responses for Mr. Moses to address in his presentation. But with that said, I would like to highlight some aspects, when it comes to the SEZs and the IDZs, and that both Atlantis SEZ and the Saldanha Freeport IDZ represents critical pillars of the South Africa's industrial strategy, and have the potential to be powerful engines of hope for the South African economy. In theory, they're designed to drive investment attraction and promote industrial development, and also to unlock sustainable job creation for our communities. And looking at our current status, there is much cause for optimism. The Atlantis SEZ is positioning South Africa as a continental leader in the green economy by targeting renewable energy manufacturing and eco-friendly technologies. And Atlantis is also turning the global drive for sustainability into local factories and stable jobs, and aligns with South Africa's just energy transition. Meanwhile, the Saldanha IDZ, it offers world-class deep water port infrastructure and is uniquely positioned to serve the oil and gas service sector, to host critical ship repair services and build a pipeline for the emerging green hydrogen economy. It also operates as a specialized customs control area that simplifies logistics for international maritime operators. Together, these zones prove that South Africa can attract world-class investors and develop sophisticated global supply chains. However, Chairperson, the trajectories highlight that alongside their strengths, they've also been hampered by ongoing operational weaknesses, mainly as a result of regulatory environment. And despite their incredible potential, these vital economic engines, unfortunately, are not yet operating with all cylinders firing. And if we are to fully realize our grand vision for the spatial industrial development, we must be honest about these shortcomings. In a report released last year containing reform proposals to turbocharge our SEZs, the Centre for Development and Enterprise argued that for an SEZ to be successful, it needs to be truly special. It needs to offer investors different rules from the rest of the economy, to which I would also like to add, it would need to offer better operating conditions. We will know that our SEZs have truly moved into a higher gear when the investment they attract ticks 3 boxes. Firstly, that it is new investment. Secondly, that it is investment that wouldn't have happened anywhere or otherwise. And thirdly, that it would be investment that wouldn't have gone elsewhere in the country. And South Africa has been stuck in a low growth rut for more than a decade, while unemployment has climbed. And so it's evident that the business as usual approaches to policy fall far short, and we need to try something new and bold. And while broader reforms will bring sustainable solutions, we must also explore the potential of SEZs to be an experimental environment for red tape reduction and innovative public-private partnerships. Our SEZs must be at the forefront, be the forefront hubs where we eliminate the slow pace of investor conversion through such interventions such as the Fusion Center, so that translating expressions of interest into operational factories on the ground happens without bureaucratic bottlenecks or delays. And Chairperson, we must also be honest that it's often government's cumbersome regulatory environment which can detour investment and be the deciding factor whether companies invest in South Africa or in another country. But Chairperson, I should emphasize that we should not view these challenges as failures, but rather as pointers to where we can refine and enhance our strategic roadmap. The underlying foundation of both SEZs is robust, and investor appetite remains to be unlocked if we can resolve these friction points. If our SEZs are to unlock this latent power to revitalize manufacturing, promote export-oriented industries, and generate sufficient jobs to tackle the country's unemployment crisis, we will also need to collaborate with the whole of government approach on these relevant issues, from visas to licensing to overall cost of doing business in South Africa, but more specifically, the cost of doing business within an SEZ. In conclusion, Chairperson, both SEZs demonstrate immense potential to reshape the economic landscape of the Western Cape and South Africa at large, and Atlantis offers a sustainable blueprint for green economy, while the Saldanha Bay serves as a critical maritime and logistic gateway. If we can learn and adopt the lessons from success stories such as countries as China, Mauritius, Colombia, and Turkey, our SEZs, when reimagined and effectively implemented, could become powerful tools for attracting capital, technology, and skills required to achieve our apex priority of economic growth and job creation in South Africa. Chairperson, that is all for me. Mr. Sean Moses will be leading the DTIC in the presentation, and I'd like to hand over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, colleagues, all protocol observed. Just share the presentation. Can I just get the cue if it's visible on that side?
It is visible.
Thank you very much, DM. Chair, the DM Abrams have done a good introduction job, so that will assist in the speed of the presentation. Just as a background to take the members back to the 8th and 9th of October, this is when the oversight visits happened at Atlantis and Freeport, Saldanha. With respect to both SEZs, key issues were raised that required, as you expressed, Honourable Chair, inputs from various stakeholders to enhance the performance of the SEZ. Pertaining to Atlantis SEZ, one of the key constraints at the time that was highlighted was the funding for bulk infrastructure. In particular, the funding applications that the SEZ submitted to the DTIC that required some unblocking. There was also a expression from the SEZ in the presentation that one of the constraints, especially when they're engaging with investors and with regards to the current investors, that they have subsequently attracted is the aspect that the SEZ is lacking tax incentives. So Atlantis SEZ is one of the SEZ that have not been conferred with the tax incentives, and I'll speak to that also a bit later. Because of the lack of fiscus or the diminishing fiscus, SEZs are exploring new opportunities. One of these opportunities is looking at private sector involvement. However, one of the observations made by the SEZ is that they feel that the current PPP framework that's being implemented by National Treasury is still cumbersome, and so there was then a request for streamlining that. Pertaining to Freeport Saldanha, one of the unique features, as DM Abrams has highlighted, is that Freeport Saldanha is located within one of the deepest ports within South Africa. So there is a section of ports land that has been designated as part of the SEZ. However, because there is not a clear framework at the time in place, or specific lease agreement that was in place, there is then a misalignment, or was a misalignment, between the Ports Act and this SEZ Act that impacted the ability to land investor on what is deemed as ports land, or land that belongs to the DNPA. So what is required, as iterated, it's dedicated support from strategic stakeholders such as National Treasury that we have here today, municipalities which we had participating during the oversight visits, the province and DNPA. If we combine all our efforts, then we can certainly help accelerate the development in both of these SEZs. And as highlighted, and this forms part of the industrial policy framework, SEZs have the potential to reindustrialize the country, create much needed jobs, and provide to the economic growth of the country and also the province. Chair, this presentation, the members are also familiar with it, but I thought it's always good just to highlight in terms of what the objectives of the SEZ program are. So as indicated there, we're looking at facilitation of industrial hubs, or the creation of that, looking at the promotion of our industrial policy, ensuring that through the establishment of SEZ, there's then beneficiation and value addition, development of specifically world-class infrastructure, and the SEZs have shown in certain areas that they become a beacon of light for businesses, especially where infrastructure is in decline from a municipal perspective. Most important is that the SEZs are there to attract much needed foreign and domestic investment. It's also used to diversify the country's export basket. If, as DM has highlighted, if all SEZ fire on all their cylinders, then it can indeed push the needle forward in terms of accelerating economic growth. And one of the key pillars that we are focusing on now with the new strategy, which I'll talk to later, is also creating new and innovative economic activity that will add to the speciality of special economic zones. Honorable Chair, these are the much talked about tax incentives that are usually awarded to SEZs through National Treasury. It's a function of the Minister of Finance to confer these tax incentives. However, since the inception of the program, we have only 6 SEZs that has been awarded with these tax incentives. Those 6 SEZs are listed below. It's Kuga, East London, Richards Bay, Jubi, Saldanha Bay, and Maluti Apufong. The 6 who have not received the tax incentives are Atlantis, which we are talking about today, Komazi, SEZ, OR Tambo, SEZ, Musina Makado, SEZ, the Chwane Automotive, SEZ, and the Namakwa, SEZ. And recently, the Minister has also gazetted the designation of the Fetagomo Dubatse SEZ, which we're still awaiting feedback from the Minister of Finance, whether that SEZ will have the benefit of these tax incentives. Chair, this is just for the benefit of the committee as well, in terms of the performance as of Q4 of 2025-2026 of the financial year. In terms of the cumulative performance, we had 224 operational investors located in the SEZs. That brought about 31.7 billion rand worth of investment and approximately 28,821 permanent job opportunities as well. Noting, Chair, that these figures have been generated from 8 operational SEZs. So SEZs like your Musina Makado, Komazi, SEZ Namakwa, that is currently being operationalized, have not been included in these numbers, but it is a significant impact in terms of their performance, and it also shows a year-on-year growth since the inception of the program. Chair, in previous presentations to the committee, I think I've highlighted that the Minister has requested the World Bank to do an independent study of the SEZ program, or review of the SEZ program. I'm pleased to announce that that study has been finalized. So what we can take from that study is, and I thought just to put some key features on that as well. So from the World Bank study, the assessment indicated that between 2016 and 2024, the aggregated funding amount spread across national government, so this would mean funding that was towards bulk infrastructure and top structure, provincial funding, which predominantly focuses on your operational funding, and the incentives provided to businesses located in SEZ. So when we talk about the incentives provided, then we talk about the tax incentives to businesses that amounted to aggregated amount of 24.2 billion rand. During the same period, the aggregated revenue received via your corporate income tax. So this means that it's the companies that's operating that has been taxed on the corporate tax rate, the employees that has then been employed by these companies through the personal income tax, and then the rates that the SEZ entities are paying to municipalities. Through that, the SEZs have then generated an aggregated revenue of 14.8 billion rand. So, Chair, this number also then excludes the number that I listed earlier in terms of the cumulative investments that have been crowded in on this. So this just focus on, if you will, the operational revenue that was obtained. So what the World Bank study then also says is, if you take 2024, the year 2024 of the SEZ program, it is then where the revenue, and so remember the revenue that we highlighted above here in terms of personal income tax, your corporate income tax, and your rates that have been generated exceeded the expenditure from national provincial government, as I listed in bullet point 1, generating a surplus of 510 million. What this means, Chair, according to the World Bank, if they then use the benefit to cost ratio at a 8% rate, a discounted rate of 8%, it implies that the SEZ program generates 61 cents in the revenue for every R1 spent. The study also goes on to say that if the program follows this trajectory, then by 2028, it will reach a break-even point as well. However, Chair, as noted, there is some key constraint to the financial performance that impacts the financial performance of the SEZ program. One of these constraints is that the annual funding for the SEZ program has declined. According to the World Bank report in the study, they highlighted that in 2014, the program was allocated 1.4 billion rands of funding. And when we looked at this financial year, Chair, we've only received under R1 billion of funding. I think it's key to note that obviously in 2014 there was lesser SEZs. So today we're sitting with 12 SEZs as stabled, and these SEZs would then need to benefit from less than R1 billion of funding to achieve the same objective that was set with the inception of the program. As highlighted in the previous slide, only 6 SEZs of the 12 benefit from the current tax incentive. Or when I say benefit from the current tax incentive, it means that the companies that are located within those 6 SEZs can apply to SARS for reduction of corporate tax and to claim back on some of the other tax incentives there. The World Bank study only found that 30 companies from the 224 companies across operational SEZs benefit from the tax incentives. And one of the reasons that was cited by SEZ entities is to say that there is some complexities in terms of companies applying for the tax incentives. But I believe in the National Treasury presentation, they will also talk to easing not necessarily the criteria, but the process of companies being able to access this incentive as well. The World Bank then goes on to say that in order to push the needle forward, to attract more investment into the SEZ, noting, Chair, that it's not just tax incentives that drive investment. So there's other factors pertaining to that, which I'll also touch base on. However, the World Bank report believe that if there's a consistency in the application of tax incentives across all SEZ. That will definitely create policy certainty and also drive investment. Chair, this is just a profile. The committee has seen this as well. It's just to highlight where the SEZ is, Atlantis SEZ is located, that it is operational, it has a CEO in place and the board chair. Significant to note, Chair, is that this funding number has subsequently increased since the oversight visit. So that is one of the positive changes that has happened after the oversight visit, is that additional projects have been approved for bulk infrastructure funding. And I believe that problem that the SEZ has raised is no longer prevalent on the SEZ as well. The total investment value is there, and then the number of employment we've also highlighted. Chair, I've touched on this. This was just to outline in detail what the challenges were that was highlighted during the oversight visit. Just to talk to, and I will also touch base on it. I've already indicated in terms of the SEZ fund allocation, as indicated, there was a need for greater private sector involvement, and through the introduction of the spatial industrial development strategy from the DTIC, we have now put a key emphasis on private sector participation in SEZ development. So this will also go a long way in terms of assisting the SEZ in terms of attracting private sector development. On the tax incentives, Treasury will most likely outline their position on this as well. However, Chair, we're also looking at non-tax matters to see how we can best improve investor confidence as well. DM Abrams has also highlighted that there's introduction of tools like the fusion centers that can help investors when they locate in SEZ to fast track or to unblock certain blockages as well. So we found with some of the studies that the ease of doing business is an important attraction tool for SEZs in the main as well. Chair, I've spoken to the solutions. This slide just indicates the funding or outline the funding that has been approved subsequent to the oversight visit as well. However, Chair, we still of the opinion, and this is based with the new approach that has worked well in the implementation of SEZs like the Tshwane Automotive SEZ, that the province and the city should also consider contribution to bulk infrastructure development, and that will also aid the spheres of government in to align to the new approach of SEZ development. What's interesting, Chair, is that in the World Bank study, it was also found that in your more successful SEZs, like your Kugas, your De Witt Trade Ports, your East London, Tshwane Automotive SEZs, in these SEZs, where the provinces have actively participated, it has then also contributed to the success of those SEZs. So again, Chair, as we always promote, it is indeed a whole of government approach. Chair, this slide, DM also highlighted it in her intro notes. We just wanted to showcase that Atlantis SEZ again is operational. It is open for doing business. They have their 7 reasons to locate in the Atlantis Special Economic Zone. They development ready. They have secure energy, water, and waste. Good skills base. They have the support of provincial and local government, although more support can be added. They can offer incentives in terms of the bulk infrastructure and top structure through the DTIC. There is the Cape Lifestyle, which is also a investment attraction tool, bringing in the workplay and live concept together. There's market access and growth and enabling clusters in existing industries. This brings us to Freeport Saldanha. The same methodology has been followed here. Freeport Saldanha is also operational. Currently, we have an acting CEO, Mr. Tola Sitole. Worthwhile to note, Chair, that this is a resource from our national PMU located at the IDC that we have deployed to the SEZ to assist with the turnaround strategy. And since the work that he has been done, I think he also managed that the province has revised their outlook on the SEZ. The board chair is also from the national PMU. So this is a key indication where national government is involved through the industrial zones program. We can definitely operationalize SEZs to become functional and turn the tide as well. Through the tenure of Mr. Sitole, the SEZ has introduced a investment pipeline of 4.4 billion rand. However, this investment pipeline is dependent on key players like TNPA. But I believe the team has made significant progress in terms of signing a commercial terms framework. And today, TNPA will have an exco to make a decision on that commercial terms framework as well. That brings us to the challenges that was raised, Chair, during the oversight visit, which was the conclusion of the commercial terms framework at the time. I think there was a whole lot of back and forth for a couple of years that delayed significant progress on the southern precinct of the SEZ. And as highlighted here, Chair, that the final version of the lease is now being considered with a envisioned conclusion by the end of 2026. And I would also like to extend my appreciation to the committee because post the oversight visit, it also activated that there was then subsequent engagements by Minister Tau and Minister Creasy, which then gave light to this new development as well. So Freeport Saldanha also highlighted just the misalignment between development of port land and port infrastructure, noting that this was also one of the key constraints where the Freeport Saldanha started as an oil and gas hub. So the long lead times by TNPA to develop the port side land created then uncertainty from key investors. That combined with COVID resulted that those investors then withdrew from the SEZ. And the belief is that if we can then synchronize these port development timelines with the expectations of the investors, then we would see faster securing of investment within the SEZ as well. And one of the key engagements with TMPA is to ensure that there is this developmental alignment as well. Chair, I'm not going to talk too much on this. DM has also highlighted as well. It will also be summarized in my next slide. But as I highlighted, that through the commercial terms framework and the conclusion of the long lease term, that will then unlock the 4 billion rand investment that the SEZ has indicated as well. The SEZ also believes, because of the SEZ Act and the nature that they are, and as DM has highlighted, that this specific SEZ can be used as a sandbox to experiment how modalities within the Ports Act and the SEZ Act can be streamlined to develop the SEZ. And so the team is then proposing a new national port SEZ framework, and this will then be part of the work that is underway with the discussions of the commercial terms framework as well. Chair, also with Freeport Saldanha, it's open for business. It has developmental land. There's already top structures that is in place. They have active participating tenants, and they've been evaluated at 1.34 billion in terms of the asset base that they have. Key to Freeport Saldanha is also that they form part of a SIP designation in terms of the hydrogen strategy. So there's also continuous work underway with Freeport Saldanha on driving that sector. Chair, just the final 3 slides in conclusion, in terms of the work that the DTIC is currently doing to ensure that we advance on the SEZ program and enhance the performance of the SEZ program. We have developed a new spatial industrial development strategy. The strategy is hinged on 3 pillars. It's aimed at addressing the deindustrialization phenomena in the country. So through the SEZ program, we will achieve that there's advancement in the manufacturing sectors through the development of industrial clusters. We will ensure that there's fostering of intra-Africa trade through the development of export-orientated and Afrocentric catalytic projects. And here in specific is also then your AFCTA to see how we can best advance this. Importantly, using the SEZ program to drive economic growth and facilitate the provision of state-of-the-art infrastructure, specifically in those areas where infrastructure has been dilapidated. This will also ensure, Chair, that through the introduction of new infrastructure in those areas, that the surrounding communities and not only just the companies in the SEZs can benefit of it. The second pillar, Chair, focusing then at addressing spatial wealth and income inequalities. And as with our new designations, we are promoting it in our rural areas to also ensure that there is beneficiation of our mineral wealth, such as the case of the Fetagomo, Tubatse, SEZ. This is in an attempt to create your spatially balanced industrial economy, bringing in then your township and the rural based industrial areas, which will then be manufacturing by the SEZs that's located in this. We would also endeavor through this new SIT strategy, the integration of local SMMEs into the SEZ-based value chain, and to ensure that we establish forward and backward linkages into the township and the rural economies. The last pillar, which we deem as a critical pillar for the SEZ program, is that there will be a requirement for all SEZs to have skills development centers, either physical or virtual, or through partnerships with TVET, surrounding TVET colleges, and this will then be aimed at skilling and training the unemployed youth women in line with industry requirements. As indicated, the SIT strategy is hinged on 3 clusters. We will have the global.
Can you please wrap up now in the next 2 to 3 minutes, please? It's been long. I try to allow you.
No problem, Chair. Yeah, so this is just the second last slide. As I indicated, the SIT strategy will be hinged on these 3 industrial clusters. Your globally competitive industrial cluster, which is underpinned by SEZs, national competitive industrial clusters, which will be driven through your industrial parks, your regional competitive industrial clusters, which will then be driven through your township and rural enterprise development hubs. Chair, this is then just more of the granular details in terms of the SIT strategy, how we plan to roll the strategy out in terms of reforming SEZ governance and delivery, crowd in private capital, fast track underperforming SEZs, aggressive globally marketing and aftercare, and look at competitiveness enablers. When it comes to your industrial parks, we will look at designating priority parks as special areas, look for private infrastructure investments to SPVs or triple Ps, again, strengthen governance and management, build enterprise capabilities, market access incentives for industrial parks. Sorry, Chair. And the last one, look then at your regional competitive clusters, specifically then looking at localization, import substitution, working with departments like Department Small Businesses, looking at formalizing formal businesses, your skills and incubation support, blended project finance, and community centers. Chair, this is my last slide. It's just contact details for the SEZs if there's any further inquiries for the DTIC. The central entity platform, this QR code was recently launched by the department. It is a one-stop shop for information or single access to the websites of the 18 entities for the DTICs. It provides your frequently asked questions. So if anyone wants to know about the DTIC, they can catch this QR code And below we have Invest SA and the DTIC Fusion Center that can also be contacted if there's any requirements for unblocking. And with that, Chair, I would submit my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we receive the second presentation, Andre? Same time, 30 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. It will be Mr. Christopher Axelson from National Treasury, Chair. And Londiwe Khosa will share the presentation. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, Honourable Chair. Good morning, Honourable Members. I'm the DDG for Tax and Financial Sector Policy at the National Treasury. My name is Chris Axelson. I'll provide just an introduction to this. So I think in general, as National Treasury, we of course support the Special Economic Zones project and the program. It can be a very useful mechanism to try and bring in investment to help with spatial issues, as was discussed by the DTIC, to try and attract investment, get more employment, and be overall beneficial to the country. We are responsible for, in effect, a subset of the tax issues within the Special Economic Zone program, which is just related to the tax component. So we need to work with the DTIC and others on this portion of the program. It's very useful. However, on the tax side, we've got a lot of other considerations to take into account. My colleague Londiwe will run through the slides to go through the background to those, our perspectives, and what we plan on doing going forward. And then we'd be very happy to take comments and questions from the committee and others, and we will answer them to the best of our ability. So Londiwe, please go ahead. Thank you. Londiwe, are you there? Okay, it looks as if we're struggling to connect. Saldanha, if you can't do it, then I can share from my side and I can run through if you aren't able to. Okay, it looks like I can share. There we go. Hang on, I've got it. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
We can see the screen. We just put it in slide mode.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll just go through the some of the background. I think everybody does know the background that has started from the IDZs, where there was customs and value-added tax relief, and it was about infrastructure support. Then following a review, there was an SEZ Act that was put in place in 2014. Now, this enabled additional tax incentives compared to the IDZ. These were to encourage investment, support the export competitiveness and growth, and promote job creation. Now, there is a slightly separate process for the gazetting of SEZs and the additional SEZ tax incentives. So under the SEZ Act, the Minister of DTIC can designate an area as an SEZ after consultation with the Minister of Finance. But there is a separate approval required for additional SEZ tax incentives. So they follow a separate process, and it's in effect determined by the Minister. So it must be approved by the Minister of Finance in terms of that Section 12R. And those tax incentives, it gets a reduced corporate income tax rate of 15% compared to the standard 27%, as well as an accelerated building allowance of 10% per annum over 10 years, and an expanded employment tax incentives. All SEZs, so regardless of the ones that get the additional tax incentives, do get the VAT and customs relief. So it's in effect that area is a customs controlled area, and it gets relief from import duties and import VAT if those products are then exported again. Okay, so in terms of the requirements, the Minister of Finance must still consult with the Minister of the DTIC in order to provide those tax incentives, but the Minister must assess the financial implications for the country, and then it must be approved by a notice. In addition, we must evaluate the effectiveness of this tax incentive to address the market failure. So a lot of what we are worried about from our perspective is what additionality are we getting? So if you provide these tax incentives, in effect, you are losing revenue for the country. So if you're losing revenue for the country, we need to see that there was some potential benefit. And we call that additionality. So what is the additionality that we are getting from reducing the tax rates? Or is it a fact of the investment would have happened anyway, but now you're just losing the revenue? It's quite a difficult thing to disentangle, and it is something that we think about quite often. In terms of who can actually get the tax incentives, so even if you are located in that SEZ and it's been approved by the minister, you still need to be a qualifying company and meet these particular criteria. So you must be incorporated or effectively managed in South Africa, as well as being within the SEZ. And at least 90% of your income must be derived from the carrying on of a business or provision of services within that SEZ. So you must be carrying on a business there, getting your income from the activity within that SEZ to then claim that incentive for that income. We are trying to also prevent abuse here. So, for example, you might have heard of base erosion and profit shifting, which is closely linked to what some would say illicit financial flows. And that occurs when multinational corporations try to shift their profits outside of the country so that they don't pay tax within South Africa. So they shift their profits to tax havens, and then they don't pay the tax that is due actually within the country. We have a lot of mechanisms to try and prevent that abuse for multinationals and cross-border trade. But if you set up an SEZ within a country, the same thing could potentially happen. You've got to be careful that the profits are not shifted from companies that are outside the SEZ, which is 27%, to then go into the SEZ where you can get the lower 15%. So in effect, you can need to be concerned about a domestic base erosion and profit shifting issue. So we do have mechanisms in place to try and prevent that abuse. So in terms of how many SEZs have access to these incentives, there are 12 SEZs that are currently designated, and of those 12, 6 have been approved by the Minister of Finance to access the additional tax incentives. That's Coega, Dube, East London, Maluti Apofeng, Richards Bay, Saldanha Bay. And the others have not been approved for additional tax incentives. So they still get the VAT and customs, those other 6, but they don't get the reduced corporate income tax rate, the additional building allowance, or the expanded employment tax incentive. So what is the position of the Minister of Finance? So in the budget of 2020, the Minister of Finance said, given the fiscal position, government does not intend to extend the tax incentives for special economic zones beyond the 6 zones already approved. Expanding it would result in additional revenue forgone and must be considered within the overall fiscal framework. And there needs to be a clear evidence of effectiveness of the current SEZs that do have the tax incentives. And that position has not changed. So it's been the same position since 2020, that there hasn't been an intention to extend additional tax incentives. And a lot of the miscommunication comes from either agreements or promises that these tax incentives will be applied to additional zones. But the position has been since 2020 that we need to look at the 6 that have those additional tax incentives and do a review to see how effective they have been. When we look at tax incentives and you look at the international research on tax incentives in relation to investment, it's mainly about non-tax barriers. It's about infrastructure, which SEZs are trying to fix. It's about stable water and electricity supply, which also SEZs are trying to fix. Logistics, regulatory constraints, and governance issues. So those are all seen as very important barriers to investment that are non-tax. So a tax incentive cannot address those types of issues. And the evidence is mixed that where the tax incentives themselves stimulate the investment. So we think it's mixed and context dependent, and it's primarily based on those non-tax factors. A couple of other, why we haven't approved since those additional original 6 SEZs were put in place. The other problem is about this unlevel playing field. So you can have a domestic firm which is outside of the SEZ, which is then paying 27%. While you might get a new firm that comes in from potentially another multinational that comes in, that would do the same activity as the domestic firm outside the SEZ, but now they are paying 15% based solely on their location. It also creates these incentives, and we've seen them as Treasury because we've gotten letters on them, where there are requests for people to move from outside the zone into the zone just so that they can get the lower tax rate. So if you have firms that are located in a particular area that do the exact same type of service or provide the same type of good as someone outside of the area, they are going to be at an advantage. And it creates this displacement risk. It's different to firms that come in and weren't here before, but it is a displacement risk for firms that potentially are here. So it should be inducing the investment that wouldn't have taken place otherwise. By not granting the additional approvals, it does help protect the fiscus, but as you'll see, the costs have not actually been too large. If you look at the Tshwane Automotive Hub SEZ, that is actually a very successful SEZ which doesn't have additional tax incentives. And these are the types of evaluations that we need to do for this program to see how we take it forward. So since 2020, and this was actually after the recommendations of the Davis Tax Committee, all tax incentives are now subject to sunset dates and periodic reviews. So the Davis Tax Committee said we really should be trying to avoid the use of these types of tax incentives because of the potential negative impacts I've had in the previous couple of slides. And to do that, we need sunset dates so that there's a clear end date, which will also require a review. So it's good tax policy, it's international best practice. You don't want to make them permanent and open-ended so that they provide a benefit to firms without ever being reviewed, and you can actually assess their effectiveness. Given that we've been going through a very tough period of fiscal sustainability where we've been trying to consolidate the fiscus to reduce our debt to GDP, these incentives are also high up on our agenda to review. So we have inserted that sunset date after those recommendations from the Davis Tax Committee, and it was scheduled to expire on 1 January 2031. So what does this mean? So it means that if somebody came into an approved SEZ today, they'd be able to have a lower tax rate if it was in an SEZ with an additional tax incentive, all the way up to 1 January 2031 for the next 5 years, 4.5%. So, existing companies that are already claiming will continue to get that benefit until the 1st of January 2031. And then unless it's extended, those additional tax incentives will lapse on 1 January 2031. So if we don't do anything and we don't make any changes to the legislation, they would lapse. What is the revenue forgone? We tried to provide an estimate of this. And as I mentioned earlier, it is actually not a lot. So in terms of the fiscal consolidation efforts, it hasn't been much. You can see it's around 26 million, 37 million, 65 million by 2022, 2023. And there were only 18 companies within those 6 approved SEZs that claimed that reduced rate. So what's happening with the review? At the moment, there is a process underway to do that review. The DTIC Commission, the World Bank, they're going to do a very comprehensive review of the SEZ program performance design and policy framework. We must see the point of the review is to try and see which variables influenced the performance of those SEZs. What were the structural challenges? How were they overcome? what had the biggest bang for buck. And hope this will also include recommendations on the SEZ tax incentives, which then can inform our view on what we should be doing going forward, particularly before that sunset date of 2031. Just as a side note, there is also a global minimum tax that we introduced in 2024 in collaboration with a multitude of other countries globally. This was to try and stop that base erosion profit shifting that I had mentioned earlier. So in effect, that there is a minimum tax rate of 15% on all large multinational groups. This does have an impact on, for example, the SEZ tax design. So if, for example, a large multinational were to come in and they were using the large building allowances as well as some of the other allowances, their effective tax rate might have gone below the 15%. And in effect, the global minimum tax would then need to top them up to 15%. Just as a point to note, because it does have an impact on the effectiveness on some of these incentives, but it is being carried out globally. So what is our approach? As I mentioned earlier, we've got slightly different objectives because our main objective of the tax policy is to raise revenue, which funds social expenditure. It funds public goods, it funds the health department, it funds police officers, nurses, etc. So we need to be very careful about the revenue that we have, and we don't want to create loopholes or provide revenue forgone where it is not effective. It can be used to address market failures and externalities. So we aren't afraid of that. We do have tax incentives. We do put them in place when they are required. Normally, they are done at a temporary basis. So, for example, we put in tax incentives for renewable energy when we were struggling with the supply of energy, but they were time-bound and temporary, and they lapsed without us having to do anything. And that follows the principles of a good tax system. The problem with tax incentives is they create these other issues, so they don't follow the principles of a good tax system. You know, a good tax system is supposed to be simple, equitable, and neutral. But tax incentives always create complexity. It creates favorable treatment for some companies against others and doesn't have neutrality. But we are very happy to use them when there is a good case to use them. So is the minister going to extend beyond 2031? At the moment, we are waiting for that review, and that we do want an evidence-based approach to see what we should be doing with these tax incentives going forward. And that will lead into our decisions and our advice that we provide to the minister for him to make a decision. We did make a change this year. So there have been some complaints from companies about our anti-avoidance rules. Previously, we were saying that you weren't able to use the tax incentive if a proportion of your income arised from a connected person that was within South Africa. We've recognized that that is difficult for some of the companies to abide by, and it doesn't directly address the issue. So this year we have proposed a change to our anti-abuse provisions for the SEZ to not disqualify companies based on how much business they do with a connected company within South Africa and outside the approved SEZ. In effect, we're going to try and apply domestic transfer pricing, which is the same way we deal with international base erosion and profit shifting, so that if there isn't any abuse taking place, they can still then use the incentive. It should also simplify their qualifying criteria. Thank you. I hope that gives a perspective from our side on the incentives and some of the additional detail. Thank you.
Chair, Mr. Herman Jonker will be representing the Western Cape, Chair.
Yes, sir. You can proceed, please. Same time.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you, Chairperson, and all the committee members, as well as, of course, Deputy Minister Abrams, colleagues from the department and from entities. My name is Herman Jonker. I represent the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the Western Cape. Yeah, a little bit disjointed, I'm afraid, because my response refers back closer to some of the content that that DTIC presented on the two zones, Atlantis, SEZ, and Freeport, Saldanha. Chair, I did ask the Secretariat also to just display a response letter that was provided by our head of department, but just before I refer to the contents of the letter, may I please just apologize. There has been a bit of to and fro between our department and the committee secretariat about the dates of this engagement. The letter referred to an engagement with our MEC and asked the department to be available. Today, however, our MEC is at the equivalent of a MINMEC, except between the MECs and mayors, which is effectively a MEC-May. Our head of department and DDG have been asked also to present at that engagement. It was one that's been in the diary for a while, but some shifts have also taken place. So I apologize. That's only myself and Dr. Abrams are here from the department, and not our DDG or head of department. Chair, I'm just providing an overview to the response letter. The letter from the committee to our MEC aimed at two very particular issues, one for Atlantis SEZ and one for Freeport Saldanha. The one for Atlantis SEZ was around access to the capital funding for infrastructure in the zone. And in the letter, there's a clear response of all the items of capital infrastructure where funding application has now been successful. And that particular issue then has been resolved. I think it was also displayed in Mr. Moses's presentation. The second issue was for Freeport Saldanha, and it alluded to the intention of the province to withdraw operational funding from Freeport Saldanha. Chair, maybe a little bit of background is that there had been a to and fro between our executive and the entity about operational funding. It started actually before COVID, where the zone itself, the board at the time.
Why are you not sharing? Why are you not sharing the letter?
I beg your pardon, Chair. I was under the impression the Secretariat would share the letter. May we perhaps scroll up a little bit to the answer, the response from Atlantis SEZ. Apologies, Chair. Chair, that first part was in response to the Atlantis SEZ question about DTIC funding from the SEZ fund for infrastructure. And those are the amounts and projects that have been funded. I don't know if the committee wants a minute or so to have a look at it, or if we're okay to scroll down to the response to the Freeport Saldanha item. So the issue with Atlantis SEZ was access to SEZ funds for CapEx, and Freeport Saldanha was around operational expenditure, operational funding from the provincial government. Chair, as I mentioned a minute ago, the background was related to a 5-year deal which was made just before COVID-19 pandemic, where the SEZ board proposed to the executive and to the provincial government that they would require a 5-year funding window in terms of operational funding, and that major investors were about to be landed, and therefore the entity would become financially self-sustainable. Our previous MEC also sent out a policy directive around entities becoming financially self-sustainable. However, during COVID-19, two major investors for whom purpose-built infrastructure was constructed, turnkey solutions of warehouses, particular to the operations of those investors, and both of those investors withdrew as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that fundamentally changed the revenue projections of the zone. However, the executive remained relatively impatient with the turnaround. Most recently, about a year or so ago, Chair, the shareholder asked the board to present a recovery plan, and the recovery plan had a few major components. First one was stabilization of the entity, and that was in order to populate the board, which didn't have all its position filled. Secondly, to appoint a chief executive, and thirdly, to also look at the organizational structure. The second stream of the recovery plan was focused on cost savings, and there specifically additional office space had been limited, and the entity is now operating only from its access complex in Saldanha Bay in the zone, as well as a very small office footprint in Cape Town, where obviously a lot of the investor meetings and interfaces with major stakeholders occur. And the third one was focused on revenue enhancement, and this was mainly to ensure that the zone fills up with tenants, paying tenants, but also some other strategies. For example, if tenants sign a right of first refusal while they're busy developing their project and needed security of their land tenure, that those rights of first refusal would then also be subject to some form of an options fee. And on all three of those streams, Chair, the management and the board have proven to the shareholder that significant progress has been made. Over 80% of the targets in the recovery plan have been met, and the focus is now solely on landing investors. There are 2 or 3 major investors that have concluded their commercial agreements, and at least one of them has started to clear the site and will start construction within the next couple of months, which then also brings a major revenue contribution to the entity. Considering all of the above, Chair, the executive has changed its mind on the operational funding, and they've provided funding for the 26-27 financial year. So the entity has not yet received that funding. The transfer payment is in process by the department, and that's an administrative matter. But the Vote 12 budget has been assigned, and the allocation letter has been sent to the entity, which means that for the next financial year, the financial stability is secured. There are 2 major efforts to secure the longer term financial viability of the zone. One is looking at alternative funding models, which quite a bit of work is being done on by the board and the executive, and the initial presentation was made to the shareholder. And the second one, Chair, is simply a revenue enhancement and a continuation of that focus on investors, which I can, with great confidence, say has been very successful. There are 2 new investors that have recently populated their warehouses with equipment, and they're starting their operations as we speak. And the third one being the big investor that has started land clearing, and a major construction process will start before the end of the next quarter of the financial year. Chairperson, that's the overall review of the response to the letter from the department side. I just would like to check if I may have the freedom with the 2 entities, whether their CEOs are now online. I know they were in another session with the DG. CEOs or chairpersons of either of the zones, if they want to make a comment on the content provided. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Back over to the Chair.
With your permission, Chair, we have been in the meeting throughout, and I have nothing further to add to the submission that's been made. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Can we now take hands, colleagues?
Okay, Mr. Cullinan of the Atlantis SEZ Chair raises hand. He wants to comment, Chair.
Okay, please give him a chance.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I have no comments to make at this stage, Chair, but also just to extend our thanks to the Portfolio Committee for this follow-up, for the engagement, and also to the department for the continued support to the Atlantis SEZ. We really are extremely positive about the future prospects moving forward. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now invite members of the committee to comment on all the presentations. Andre, you will assist me with the hands.
Will do so, Chair.
Members, are you there?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair, we are
Please.
here.
Yes, I'm giving you a chance now to engage.
Yes, Chairperson, I did not put my hand up, but can I comment?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson, and also thank you for the opportunity. Good morning, Chair, and all members in the meeting. Chairperson, let me also start by appreciating the reports as presented by the GTIC, the National Treasury, and the Provincial Department of Economic Development in the Western Cape. Chair, yes, the issues that has been raised, because my question here is that most of the time it's like these SEZs are having challenges or problems, and then they will be having meetings with the different stakeholders which are there to assess them. But seemingly they only come to the party after probably we have made an oversight meeting to those sites and those people raise the challenges with us. But as and when they have meetings, there is no that agency of assisting them and ensure that they manage those problems so that the projects can at least grow. So I was just checking with them, especially from the Western Cape, why are we only addressing challenges as and when the portfolio committee are going to oversight to look into those issues and not addressing those things while in time. But one wants also to appreciate the work that has been done. And the issue of the incentive, Chairperson, I have been listening to the presentation of the National Treasury, which indicate why can they give incentives to certain SEZs and why they could not give to other SEZs. But my question is that, is there any plan to assist those SEZs that are in trouble or that are struggling as we speak in terms of the issue of incentives? Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much.
Chair, Ms. Swazo Webster and Mr. Mdluli, raise your hands, Chair.
Okay, in that order.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters and the various delegations that are here for the presentations. Perhaps I'll start with the DTIC and say that we welcome the 1.4 billion, which has been communicated as having been approved for the Atlantis SEZ for infrastructure and some of the top structure projects. My question is around the expected return on the investment in terms of either jobs that will be created, exports, if any, and if there's any private sector investment that they anticipate will be leveraged from the investment. I mean, I for one, am a fan of SEZs. I do believe that we need to look carefully at how we are managing our SEZs in South Africa, because I think we're yet to reach the full potential or to be able to gain the rewards that we'd want to see from the investment in the SEZs. But I think it would be important to then know what the expected return on that investment is, the 1 billion that has been communicated. My second question to the DTIC is around local procurement. In the South African context, I think part of what we often see is SEZs becoming islands of investment. And we rarely ever really see any spillover into the local economies in the area. I asked this specifically because in Atlantis, the surrounding communities are actually what you would call township economies. And I think I have for a long time spoken about the issue of strategic townships having SEZs in the country, and that being one way to industrialize townships in our country. And so my question is around what percentage or how much of the spend that happens that's associated with the Atlantis SEZ actually ends up being spent on local Atlantis-based businesses or in the surrounding communities or by business in the surrounding communities. If we have any sort of indication of that, I do think this is a question we also asked when we did the oversight. So it would be good to know if there's any actual figures since then. And then to Treasury. I mean, even when we were on oversight, we heard from the Atlantis SEZ and from DTIC that Treasury has consistently stated that there isn't sufficient evidence to justify extending incentives to additional SEZs. So I think for me, the question becomes then what specific evidence would satisfy Treasury that the incentives are actually working? Would it be the export performance? Would it be fiscal returns? What exactly would it be that would satisfy Treasury that adding incentives or extending incentives into other additional SEZs is worthwhile? And I mean, linked to that question is the question of the fact that there are some SEZs which have benefited from the tax incentives and others where they're treated differently, like this one. And so my question really is how do you define or how do you determine which SEZs are going to benefit from tax incentives and which aren't? If you have two SEZs that are designated under the same legislation and they're pursuing the same developmental objectives, then what policy rationale justifies one receiving a corporate tax rate as an example and another one not? So you then have ultimately unequal competitive conditions between SEZs. And that's why I do believe that we're seeing the differentiated kind of outcomes from our various SEZs. So the question for me becomes, how do you determine which SEZ will benefit from a tax incentive and which one won't? And then this is a comment and not a question. And I think that it might be something that exists in policy that I'm not aware of, but I think there's a broader policy question that's arising from our engagement today. And this is whether South Africa should move away from a uniform SEZ support model. And it's linked to my question to Treasury, and start looking at adopting a differentiated kind of support based on the maturity, the developmental stage of each of the SEZs. You might find that emerging zones may require greater infrastructure, for example, and establishment support. And you might find that even the tax question then is determined on the basis of the SEZ, how it's structured, what the model of the SEZ is, and whether it's emerging or has matured more. Because you might find that mature zones require, for example, less grant funding and greater emphasis on investor attraction and commercial sustainability. I need a different kind of support. So is there a differentiated model that exists? And if not, I do think this is something that we need to be looking at when it comes to our SEZ in terms of how they are treated, because they are all different. They all focus on different industries. They all exist in different locations, and they're all at different levels of maturity. And therefore, the support they need might not be a uniformed model per se. And so I'm wondering if there is a differentiated model. And if so, on what basis is the model differentiated? Because from what I know and what I've studied and seen, it seems the approach is quite uniformed when it comes to SEZs. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Chair, Mr. Ndluli, Chair.
Thank you so much. I have some questions to DTIC and National Treasury. The first question to DTIC is the World Bank found that the program returns only 61 cents per rand spent. Why is the solution therefore more funding rather than a fundamentally different model? The second question is Samsung disinvested because tax incentives were too complex. Yet you're proposing to extend those same incentives. How do you explain that contradiction? The third question is you're asking Treasury to exempt SEZ PPPs from PFA and MA requirements. What accountability mechanisms replace those statutory safeguards? The fourth one is annual funding has dropped 26% since 2014, but you keep designated new zones. Why designate zones you cannot fund? The fifth question is, you committed to finalizing the Freeport Saldanha lease by end of June. Will that deadline be met? Those are questions to the DTRC, and now questions to National Treasury. You cite Tshwane Automotive Hub as proof incentives aren't necessary, but TASEZ sits next to the country's largest automotive cluster. Is that really comparable to Atlantis or Saldanha? The second one to Treasury is over 18 companies claimed the reduced rate across 6 approved zones. Is that not evidence the qualifying criteria are too restrictive, not that the incentive doesn't work? The third question is the global minimum tax is also 15%. Has Treasury modeled what that means for the SEZ value proposition for foreign investors this program is supposed to attract? And the last one is a new investor today has under 5 years of incentive certainty before the 2031 sunset. For capital intensive manufacturing, is that generally sufficient to move investment decisions? Thank you very much.
Is there more hands, Andre? No, thank you very much.
No more hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I think let me just address some few questions to National Treasury myself. That it is evident, and we've been arguing this as politicians from different corners, not that we are reckless, that austerity leads to contracting economies. As we can see in South Africa, our economy has not been growing. And we've not had any alternative response in terms of how we want to deal with those issues. And secondly, it leads to deepening socioeconomic inequality, rising unemployment, and mass social unrest, as we are beginning to see. So all these things are a sign of the impact of austerity. And we know, as a matter of fact, that manufacturing has been in sharp decline since 1994, from about 25% to about 12% now. Just yesterday or the other day on Wednesday, the DTIC approved the industrial policy for the country. With this kind of stance from National Treasury and being adamant that nothing is going to change, you come to the meeting, you are resolved. The meeting is a platform to engage. I don't think that this is kind of attitude that we need from public servant of saying, look, we've made up the rule, therefore it's either you take it, you leave it. Because in no time, there will be no tax revenue in the country if we don't push to industrialize our country, because a lot of things have happened. Our people are not working. So this is not one thing that we want to take lightly. So we really need to have an open engagement, not an engagement where you say, no, look, this is it, take it or leave it kind of. It's not going to work. And when you look into the numbers that you presented from National Treasury with regard to what is the impact to revenue, it's literally nothing from the figures you've provided. We've not even done a research about those figures. I don't think that it's a kind of engagement that we're expecting from National Treasury. Perhaps we do need to speak to the entire leadership of National Treasury very strongly on these issues. And secondly, the Western Cape, I'm confused. We were asking, what is your provincial government investment? I'm happy that you say there is now a budget approved, but your letter talks about minor activities that are taking place there at those SEZ, and that's not the question we're asking. I really need to perhaps take us into confidence. What are those figures that you are talking about of the budget? Can it assist in the problems that have been identified in those two SEZ, so that we can at least leave this meeting knowing very well that something is going to happen? Because what we are not going to allow as a portfolio committee is this thing that of people just coming to tick the boxes. When we come here, we engage and we make recommendations, and we expect that those recommendations should be carried. Otherwise, it's no longer an oversight. We just come to listen to your stories and you go home. Because I am not going to accept this meeting that we're going to come with the problems we've had from October. We're going to leave even much more depressed with these particular problems. And we still have enough time to engage. Let's allow you colleagues to come through. We will raise some of the issues with the DTIC, of course, because we've been engaging them quite regularly. And I think some of the colleagues have raised some issues, but I'm really not taking kind what the National Treasury is coming to tell us. I don't think that's how we must present our issues. I will now hand over to you, maybe National Treasury and province, and then those questions of the DTIC will come last. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable members, honourable chair. I'll try and go through some of these questions. Any plan to assist struggling SEZs with incentives? So I think part of what we are trying to do is to assess what the incentives have done. So there are some of the incentives that have tax incentives, some of the SEZs that have tax incentives, but they haven't done well, whereas others have done better. And what is driving the SEZs that do well, and what is driving the SEZs that don't do well? And that's part of what this review needs to be about, so that we can create an SEZ program that is effective. At the moment, we don't have plans to provide additional incentives to the struggling SEZs. We need to see what the current program does. What would be sufficient evidence to show that it is working? I think definitely the level of investments that have gone into the zones, the level of exports, the employment, the take-up of the incentives, those are the things that would be included in that review and that the World Bank would definitely look at. Those would be a minimum to say, okay, well, how are they doing, especially compared to other sectors as well as other areas which might have the same type of businesses. There is this question about how did you determine which were benefiting? The initial approach was that there would be one incentive, one SEZ in each of those areas that would get the tax incentive. And what
I think your network is not assisting. If you can just check, we cannot hear anything now. Andre,
Chair, we're looking at the chair. Maybe we proceed with the
try and
others.
assess whether they're
he's back here.
It's back again, Chair.
It is left now. Whilst we allow him, can we give the Western Cape? Whilst we're allowing him to sort out the connection, because it's a department we would like to engage.
Thank you, Chair, if I may.
Yes, please proceed.
Chair, I think it is for me perhaps to respond to the question from Member Muscat about bringing challenges to the National Portfolio Committee, only once they arise and not earlier. I just want to perhaps take us one step back and look at the perspective that these provincial entities and us as a provincial department report to our own parliament and our own portfolio committee. And administratively, from an administrator's point of view, as a department, we also report to our parent department, which is the DTIC. So I don't, as far as we understand, there's no direct mechanism for province to report to or engage with the National Portfolio Committee other than through the department whose committee it is. So we are quite dependent on the National Department of Trade, Industry, Competition for the communication channel to this committee. However, as a province, we'll also very much welcome this type of engagement. We are also policymakers in our own right, but as far as national economic policy is concerned, we always work through the DTIC. So there are very strict reporting lines, both from our department to the national department, but particularly also from the entities to the national department, because they are the ones, the entities more directly sit under a policy instrument of the National Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And maybe also just to mention that there are many, many challenges that we address continuously together with the entities as partners. And very few of them actually make them to either our provincial or the National Portfolio Committee, because these are challenges that we address and often are able to resolve. It is usual only for unresolved issues to be escalated to the parliamentary platform, and hence not all issues are aired at portfolio committee level. So it is a little bit of a second, third, or fourth step in the escalation process, and not often the first step. However, very often what we ask, and this is again the channels of communication, we report to an MEC, and our MEC sit at MINMEC, and that MINMEC may, at MINMEC, the MEC may also raise serious issues then with the National Minister and DM, obviously, who are the ones then that report to this committee. So on the one hand, Chair, if I may, sort of respect to the normal channels of communication. On the other hand, many issues that are resolved in cooperation with not only our department, the entities and the national department, but also other entities like Transnet, even the National Minister of Transport, or when it's about energy, for example, with the National Minister of Energy and Electricity. So these channels are used often. I think we welcome this concept of having better interaction with the National Portfolio Committee, but with respect, Chair, it would normally be through the National Department and not directly.
Honourable Chair, I'm back if I'm able to continue.
Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll leave my camera off this time. There was the point about the unequal competition between SEZs, which we do see and we definitely take note of. I think what we were trying to say in the presentation is we're also very worried about the unequal treatment between companies within an SEZ and those outside of the SEZ, especially if they're doing the exact same activity, which does worry us as well. The point on the Tshwane SEZ, I think that was what we were looking at as a case study where it is doing very well, and why is it doing very well, even if it doesn't have the tax incentive. If there is an area close by that does, is that affecting it? And that's what we need to get the bottom of. The question on the 18 companies, and are the qualifying conditions too difficult? And I think that might be a very reasonable conclusion to make from that. So that is a very good point. That is part of why we've adjusted the qualifying criteria and the anti-avoidance rules in the 2026 budget to make it easier to administer and to try and address some of those potential tax and base erosion issues, but in a simpler manner that doesn't hurt the companies. So that is very useful. We did look at the impact of the global minimum tax. It's based on effective tax rates, not the headline rates of 15%, but if those companies are using other types of allowances that bring them below the 15% effective rate, they will then have to make those top-ups. I also agree that it's a good point for companies if they are going to make a very large investment. The timelines might be longer than 5 years in terms of their internal rate of return. So it would be beneficial to try and assess what is happening with this incentive sooner rather than later, before the 2031 deadline. Chair, on your point about engaging, I mean, we are certainly here to engage. We want to engage. This isn't us just putting forward a presentation and saying that is the end of it. That's why we want to review this incentive. We want to see what works, what doesn't, so that we have an evidence base in order to provide advice to the Minister of Finance that is grounded in evidence, so that he can make a good decision about what to do going forward. And we're very happy to have discussions here to talk about the pros, the cons, what the potential advantages and disadvantages are as well. We were just putting forward our and the Minister's position on this incentive that has been in place since 2020, but we're very happy to engage further and have more of a discussion on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TTIC.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me hand over to Mr. Moses to answer first, and then if Mr. Cullinan wants to come in on some of the specific Atlantis questions, then I'll come in at the end. Thanks.
Hi, Chair. Just to acknowledge, DDG Mautu Molafani is also in the meeting, so maybe I'll give DDG the opportunity and then plug gaps where possible.
Thanks, Sean, and greetings to the Honourable Chair and Honourable members and the DM and the colleagues. I think we share the sentiments that the Honourable Chair has raised. Firstly, I think let me just appreciate the role that the Portfolio Committee has played in making sure that we bring everyone together to ensure that we address the challenges as they pertain to the Western Cape. But Chair, I think the reality is that countries are competing now, and Africa is on the rise. There are so many countries across the continent that are currently using special economic zone to drive development. And some of these countries, we see them even overtaking South Africa in terms of manufacturing output. We recently saw Morocco as one of those countries. And these countries, Chair, interestingly, they came to South Africa to learn about South African SEZ program. We took some of these countries through the program. We helped them to craft their own programs. But because of the policy uncertainties in South Africa, they are now growing at a much faster rate than South Africa. And of course, in South Africa, there is an opportunity to expand the manufacturing output to address the challenges that the Chair has raised in terms of the percentage to the GDP. And that's why we continue to designate new SEZ. The Minister has recently designated an additional SEZ in Gomazi, in Fethagomotubat, to deal with critical minerals, to ensure that we beneficiate minerals at the source. So that's the reason why we're driving the manufacturing and the SEZ program. But the challenge, Chair, is that as it stands, we don't have a concrete value proposition for SEZs. It is difficult as a DDG responsible for investments, amongst others, to go and attract investors and say, in South Africa, we have SEZ program. If you locate in the SEZ, you'll benefit from the 15% tax. As we compete with the other countries, now they come to South Africa, they locate in the SEZ, and they realize that they are able to benefit from those tax incentives. Some of these companies, as Sean has indicated, they've since disinvested. Chair, I'm also the board chair of Tshwane Automotive SEZ. Part of what we used to attract those companies into the SEZ was the fact that we will designate the SEZ and will provide tax incentives for those suppliers that will set up in Tshwane. The companies are there in Tshwane, and they now realize that there are no tax incentives on offer. In actual fact, the state has lied to them. So the risk is that, as Chris has indicated, the assumption is that the SEZ is one of the successful SEZ, but in reality, we attracted those companies on the basis of tax incentives that are non-existent. And the risk is that they can relocate at any given time. So that's a challenge, Chair. And the challenge is that I think colleagues often equate this program with revenue versus non-revenue. Our view is that the SEZ is aimed at attracting new investments. In some instances, we use the SEZ as an instrument to expand existing SEZ. So we're not using the SEZ to relocate companies from Germiston to locate in the Vaal. We attracting SEZ companies from other countries. We're using tax incentives to attract companies that otherwise would not have come in South Africa if it wasn't for that those tax incentives. So for us, Chair, is whether we have investments or we don't have investments. And in this case, as you correctly alluded, we don't have investments. Hence, the manufacturing output continues to go down because we don't have a value proposition to attract those investments. And as you correctly indicated, again, only 18 companies out of 226. So even if we were to designate all the SEZs, the chances are not all the companies will benefit. So there's no foregone revenue on that note. So I think, Chair, just to respond to Treasury colleagues, we have done the study already. The World Bank study is there. We are ready to present it to National Treasury even tomorrow or today. We have done a thorough work in the DTIC insofar as the new SEZ model. I think Sean has presented a synopsis of that. We can present it at any given time, which makes fundamental propositions, including the opening up to the private sector participation. So to ensure that the state is not burdened in terms of fiscus, we are now opening up for private sector participation. We are establishing a new SEZ in Gauteng, and it is going to be purely developed and driven by the private sector. To ensure that the state is not overburdened. But the reality is that for us to attract investors into that SEZ, we need to have a concrete value proposition. We are not building industrial parks, typical industrial park or real estate. We're developing a value proposition that would help us to attract advanced manufacturing. Under PPP, the issue is that we're not trying to circumvent the PPP, our PFMA. The idea is that I think even Treasury is in the process of relaxing some of the regulations as they pertain to the PPP to ensure that at least we are able to attract without going through a tedious process to attract private sector companies to come and develop these SEZs in partnership with the with the government of South Africa. So I think, Chair, let me stop at that. And I think Sean can add if there's anything, but I just thought, let me just add to this issue of incentives. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there any further hand?
Chair, there's Mr. Hamilton, the DJ has raised his hand, Chair.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, DJ. You'll come in now. I'm just checking with members of the committee and then so that the DG can also help to answer some of the questions.
There's no hands from the members, Chair.
Okay, over to you, DG.
Greetings, Chair, committee members, DM, and officials from the province and the SEZ. Apologies for joining the meeting late. Chair, again, pronouncing on the gratitude that Mawutu Mulifane's DDG has raised on the work that the committee has done to get us this far. There were a couple of questions that were raised that we can look at how optimally to respond to, including, amongst others, in writing, as we always commit to the committee when we appear in front of it. The World Bank study that Mawutu referred to is key, and I would hope, being an independent global multilateral organization, who would not espouse the views of the DTI exclusively to the detriment of anyone else would be accepted, at least not at face value, but with engagement and whatever the questions that we need to have. But we have to engage with the study and not behave like it is not there. And that's what I would plead, that we use that study to actually prove the value of the SEZ program and what it has delivered. In terms of the return on investment, I think it was Member Mdluli who asked about the 0.6 ROI. That study is very clear, Chair. It says that 2024 was the inflection point, if I'm correct, in terms of the year, where after the initiation stage of the SEZ program, unsupported as the program is from an incentives point of view, we have now reached a break-even point, where for the first time, the costs are now lower than the revenues. The benefits are higher than the costs. The issue is, do we have what it takes to now ramp up this success? The work has been done, the foundation has been laid, the systems are in place, the lessons have been learned, and the excuses should no longer be allowed to perpetuate further. The program can perform. And so it's taken us this long, and this rate of return that is referred to in the study, which looks low, if you do not account for the fact that we were still in the initial stages of the program, and we have been building up and learning and fixing and fine-tuning, then it will look negative, when in fact it is not. It's a break-even point from which a future that is more productive, more profitable is possible, but it all depends on what we do as a collective coming out of this meeting. And so, Chair, I think we should look at answering that question in that manner. On the question of the local spend and produce, it will always differ from SEZ to SEZ, and it will also differ on the stage of development that the SEZ is in. So when we are in construction and all those things, at least in those that we've recently done, we have ensured optimal compliance to local content and local participation, sometimes surpassing that, particularly the norms that have been set from a construction point of view. And then once we start operating, the SEZs have systems in place that try to source the support services and related requirements as locally as possible. And then when it comes to the actual core function of the companies that are operating inside the SEZ, and if we are to use the Tswane for its sins, TASES, the local content of that SEZ is determined by the Automotive Master Plan 2020-30, which is aiming at 60% local content, but obviously is having its own challenges. And that local content in some cases will not be localized to the location of the SEZ, but will be localized to the broader economy, as it were. Chair, I will probably defer to the colleagues on the other areas that they may be able to speak to. But I think the colleagues have answered most of the questions that I had picked up at the time of joining the meeting. With apology, gratitude, and I submit DM, Chair, and honorable members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The point we're trying to make, I think, with National Treasury, just now in March, we attended the investment conference. The president led the pledges in trillions. Now, the understanding is always that those pledges, for them to be realized as foreign direct investment, they have to be anchored by some support, infrastructure, or easing the cost of doing business or things like those. So in our case, which is why I was saying that I'm happy when National Treasury says they're here to engage, because it didn't sound like that. I'm happy, and then I want us to agree formally to open this engagement, because I think when this tax incentive was thought out, there were a lot of consideration that were in place. And secondly, can we have DG as a matter of urgency, the actual presentation of the World Bank study in relation to the SCZ, so that we can come to some scientific conclusion on what should be the way forward? Because as we do study tours, visiting different countries, we have a sense that the manufacturing has been anchored by some of these programs, including the case studies that the DDG has raised now from GTIC, that some of the countries who came to us to learn from us, they'll be surprised that we didn't do anything. We said, and we just were comfortable with the status quo. What we should try and do, we need the department like National Treasury, ourselves, and other economic cluster department. Our sole proposition should be about extricating our people from poverty. This thing of thinking that everything must be a grant, this grant that, it's not going to move the needle for our economy. So we need to all sit together and agree that indeed there is a space for engagement, there is a space for policy shift, and then let's take those decisions, because if you look at many countries who are succeeding, they prioritize their people, and by no means I mean that the social wage is, I mean, the social security net is not. It is important, because there are those people who are vulnerable, but we have far too big a number of unemployed people who should be working, and we have to do our best to make sure that we can do that, because I can tell you that democracy that doesn't serve the interests of its people, it can only take from them and then give them things like this. So we need to make sure that we can respond. So the view is that the austerity policies have not really assisted our people to have sustainable income. Instead, it has further promoted those who are few, who have their wealth has doubled. And we cannot not talk about it when we're in the space where we can influence the policy direction in terms of what needs to happen. What we need to agree, maybe as a way forward, is how do we ensure that we open that engagement? I said, DG, before you arrived, just past Wednesday, we've received now the industrial policy for the country. It means it's going to be a document that is going to be shelved there, and nothing is going to happen to it, because there are some propositions that even ourselves as portfolio committee have made in terms of how do we reimagine the industrial policy in South Africa? How should it look like? An example has been made here about processing, beneficiating at source, because all of us have seen that the pit to port strategy, you just are exporting jobs. So we have agreed that the new policy says that now, but if we don't have this kind of engagement with National Treasury, that document is going to be gathering dust there. So it is in that context that we're trying to raise these issues, because it's not easy. We've been trying the past 2 years to meet with National Treasury. It's not easy. So when we meet with you, we must raise all our concerns, so that when you go back to the colleagues, you tell them that there is a very strong level of dissatisfaction, not because we are anti-austerity, the inability to engage as colleagues in government is making us weaker. So we do need to raise that point, and I'll hand over to you, and then you proceed. Thank you. DDG National Treasury.
Chair, before...
Yes.
So, apologies, Chair. Mr. Koza raised his hand, Chair, while we were talking, Chair.
Who's raising the hand?
Mr. Koza.
Okay, Mr. Koza, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Apologies for joining a bit late. I was attending to another meeting. But I'm raising now, Chair, to concur with what we have just shared in the meeting just now. As the Economic Freedom Fighters Chair, we maintain that austerity is the single biggest enemy of the economic growth, industrialization, and job creation in South Africa. The current low growth trajectory is not an accident, Chair. It is a direct consequence of fiscal austerity imposed by the National Treasury. And we must say it in this portfolio committee without any favor or any fear that the Treasury is not assisting in terms of the economic growth, industrialization, and job creation. And it is in this platform that they must at least open up engagement for us to get common grounds and common purpose so that we know how best do we then address this matter, because these austerities, Chair, they really don't assist us moving forward in terms of answering today to all these questions on the ground. Our people are asking us a lot of questions on job creation, but there is no movement because this austerity, they are coming hard to development. For years, the government expenditure has been constrained. Public infrastructure investment has stagnated, and productive sectors of the economy have been left without the support required to expand, Chair. We can further say South Africa cannot continue announcing trillions of rands in foreign direct investment commitments while failing to build the infrastructure necessary to absorb and sustain those investments. It's futile or it's frivolous for us to continue saying there are trillions and billions, but there is no tangible evidence on the ground that seeks to promote or suggest that really there are activities that are taking place on the ground. We don't see anything. We just hear numbers. We just see papers being shelved without any meaningful development or growth. We cannot be here, Chair, to always discuss without any meaningful progress or growth in the strategic sectors. Investment announcement mean very little when ports are inefficient. Rail networks are collapsing, Chair. Electricity supply remain unreliable, and industrial zones lack adequate support. And also, Chair, further to that, the FDI cannot substitute for a development state. Infrastructure must be the foundation upon which investment commitments are translated into productions, jobs, and growth. So the reality, Chair, is that manufacturing continues to decline, contributing less to economic activities and employment than it should be in a country seeking industrialization. I hope and believe this makes sense, Chair, to the Treasury, and it makes sense in terms of the austerities that we continue experiencing or that we see that are happening, becoming the stumbling block towards development. The contradiction of manufacturing capacity threatens, the constraints rather, of manufacturing capacity threatens our ability, Chair, to create decent jobs in the sector, and it increase exports and diversity and diversify the economy. So, Chair, with that as my background, I want to pose the following question. I'm not sure if they were answered before, or maybe perhaps the relevant guest can give us clarity on that. In terms of one, how does the department intend to ensure that the trillions of rands announced or those that were announced for the foreign direct investment commitments are directly linked to the infrastructure development, industrial expansion, and the local job creation? If maybe we can get clarity on that. And also, manufacturing has experienced a sustained decline over the past decade, Chair. What urgent intervention is the department implementing to reverse the deindustrialization and expand domestic productive capacity? I also want to understand, Chair, as to what engagement has the department had with the National Treasury regarding the impact of expenditure cuts on industrialization, infrastructure development, and economic growth. We want to understand if there is any engagement that have been discussed, because austerities are always there, but it seems as if, Chair, there's nothing that is being said in this platform. Seems as if there are no openness or open discussion. Seems like there's an elephant in this house that we need to know as to how best do we then engage on this, Chair. And lastly, given the continued deterioration of logistics, energy supply, and the industrial infrastructure, what measurable targets has the department set to restore competitiveness and support manufacturing-led growth over the medium term? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Chair, apologies, Chair, to the DM. Chair also had a hand raised, Chair.
DM.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and apologies for coming after you. I was intended to go after our DG made his contributions. So I just have a few points to add. Also just to the Honorable Motsikatsa, just to say that, this is just one level, one platform of engagement that, engagement is ongoing at the various levels. As I said, I've also been to these SEZs and I've also taken up issues and to the department and so forth. So the collaboration is ongoing, but this remains a very important platform, the portfolio committee, that, at any time that you have issues, you must please just let us know. It's why we included the slide with the contact details, so that we don't also have to wait for a scheduled committee meeting for the honorable members or members of the public, etc., to reach out to us so that we can resolve those issues in real time. I also just would like to say, with, I think there's the Chairperson, I think you're unmuted. But also just to say that when we speak about the SEZs, we can't speak about it in isolation from the greater issue of structural constraints in South Africa. And whether it's SEZs or any other investment project, we always have to look at it with a broader lens. And I often use the example of an SEZ can produce goods for export, but if we can't get those goods on a road, that needs to be maintained by a municipality, and then put those goods at a port for export, then we actually lose our competitive edge. And thus it requires, not just the DTIC, not just National Treasury and the Western Cape on this call, but it requires many other departments to actually also pull their weight and to contribute to making the SEZs a success. And so we have to look at the structural constraints which government is responsible for. And we can also then, as the DDG said, have the SEZs that the private sector then mainly focuses on to improve. And with that, the Honorable Schlager Webster mentioned, what are these SEZs doing for the community? And once again, I would bring back into other departments like higher education and so forth, to say that, yes, we can put a SEZ in a certain township or, in this context, Atlantis. But if we don't upskill the communities around in that SEZ for them to actually be equipped with the skills to work in those SEZs, then it also defeats the purpose. So we have to have that continual engagement with all stakeholders to make it successful. And then the last point I just, would like to make is that the DTIC will be holding an SEZ conference in July. It will take place in KZN, and that will be once again an opportunity for the department to showcase what our SEZs can offer to investors globally. So it's not to say that, we are, that's going to be a once-off event. Investment drives, it takes place on a continual basis. And that is just one example of where we will once again showcase what we have to offer to investors. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be solely on funding and incentives, but the project then would also be is how do we drive the cost of doing business at the SEZs down in a broader picture. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much.
Chair, my apologies, Chair. Ms. Nkosi raised the hand, Chair.
Okay.
And Dr. Kigaba.
Honorable Gosi and Dr. Kigaba, then we conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to everyone for the presentations and just for all the members who have engaged today. I think mine is really just to agree with what most of the member sentiments were around what was presented to us today. I think, Chair, what we need to all agree on is that industrialization cannot be achieved through policy declarations and the establishments of just the SEZs alone. We need to make sure that there's other considerations around public investments, strategic state support, and of course, reliable infrastructure that would be able to make these SEZ zones functional and, most importantly, contribute to the economy. I think the success of SEZ zone depends on strong not just policies around industrialization, but also just implementation. So this committee needs to really assess whether the current industrial policy and the SE zone framework is genuinely advancing inclusive industrialization, and also in terms of how it supports the different areas. I mean, member Hlazo Webster also earlier on spoke about the different stages of the different zones in terms of their maturity, in terms of the sizes and all of that. And we need to make sure that when we do speak about all these things, we are able to answer a simple question, whether the department is actually able to deliver sustainable jobs, local procurement opportunities, meaningful participation for young people, township and local entrepreneurship, and those sort of things. So I think from my side, really, it's not just about us, sitting in here and listening, but really to question and really get to the point where we actually start seeing the results, and we're not just a committee that sits and listens, that agrees and signs off on things. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Ngosi. Can we now hand over to you, colleagues, and as a last response, and then we conclude the meeting.
Chair, you had noted...
Oh, sorry, Member Kigaba. Apologies, Dr. Kigaba.
Thank you so much. Just 2 quick points, Chair. First, I think based on the conversation, the discussion that we've just had, and the conference on SEZs that the Deputy Minister just announced, one would want to emphasize what the committee is raising: the need for an all-of-government approach, particularly all of the economic sectors, involving all the tiers of government, provincial and local. There has to be an alignment of policy in regard to what we are trying to do in this regard, because in the absence of that, every sector still comes in and participates on a silo basis based on its own interests, its own take, its own approach, which may not align with a broader comprehensive vision of what we seek to achieve in this regard. I think the questions that the chair raised with regard to the alignment of macroeconomic policy, particularly fiscal policy, to the work that is being done here, which is microeconomic reform, needs to be raised, needs to be addressed quite seriously. So when we come to that conference, it must not just be the burden of DTIC alone. State-owned companies must also participate quite actively and answer the question what their role will be to providing the infrastructure capacity that will make these SEZs to become successful. Because unless we address these issues with necessary ambition, we're not going to industrialize the economy, grow it on a sustainable basis, and create decent jobs. And I think this is the issue we are raising. And linked to that is ensuring that the focus of the SEZ program is not just attracting foreign direct investments, but it's also, as even Honorable Nkosi just highlighted, addressing or developing local supplier sectors and integrating local communities with these SEZs. So we need a much more ambitious program. And I think from the point of view of DTIC, we must ensure that there is proper governance of all of these SEZs in terms of existing governance frameworks and ensuring succession planning going forward. Because that is one key area that will ensure that investors, both domestic and international, come into this sector and make the necessary investments. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Andrew, the same way we've presented.
Come again, Chair? Mr. Koza raised his hand again, Chair. Or I don't know if it's a legacy hand.
Okay, let's allow him to.
Thanks, Chair. I think I've left a few which they can just respond, perhaps to all of them. Due to my network, I wanted to come with a follow-up, but I think, let me just bring it to them so that they can respond at once, if maybe perhaps my network becomes an issue at the time. I think, Chair, the first one is to the department. If perhaps do they agree that persistent fiscal austerity has contributed significantly to South Africa's low growth rate, weak industrial performance, and rising unemployment? If they agree also to that, Chair, I think the National Treasury must also note that their continued celebration to the large FDI commitments, yet economic growth remains weak and unemployment remains extremely high, is not acceptable. Then the question is that, Chair, what concrete measures is Treasury taking to ensure that investment commitments are linked to infrastructure expansion, industrial development, localization, and sustainable job creation, rather than remaining mere announcements? And second to that, Chair, given the persistent decline in manufacturing and weak performance of the productive sector of the economy, does Treasury accept that fiscal austerity has constrained industrial growth? If they doubt, or if maybe perhaps they reject that, what evidence does Treasury have that expenditure constraint has supported industrialization and economic expansion? And lastly to that, Chair, industrialization cannot be achieved by one department acting alone. Therefore, what mechanism has Treasury established to work jointly with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and the likes of the public enterprises, transport, energy, and the provincial government to ensure a coordinated developmental program that support manufacturing, infrastructure development, and economic growth? In addition, Chairperson, the success of South Africa's industrialization agenda cannot be left to a single department. We must encourage stronger coordination between the National Treasury and the aforementioned department, as I've highlighted above. And also, Chair, industrial development requires a whole of government approach, as Dr. Gigaba have said, aligned investment, planning, and shared accountability. Without coordinated action across these institutions, neither the FDI commitments, industrial strategies will deliver the growth, jobs, and economic transformation to our people. So, Chair, I hope and believe the following department and the Treasury will at least give us clarity on that. Thanks.
Chair, Mr. Thring raised his hand, Chair.
May I proceed, Chair? Andre, can I proceed? I'm not sure if the chair has heard you.
I think you may proceed. The chair probably didn't
Yes, you can proceed. I'm just struggling with network.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes,
Chair, I think just three inputs, I think, from my side, particularly with regards to the SEZ's industrial zones, in particular. One, and the three inputs is essentially with regards to beneficiation, secondly, education, and then thirdly, collaboration. I think when it comes to beneficiation, I think is one of the low-hanging fruit. And if we fail to incorporate the aspect of the policy of beneficiation into the plan of our SEZs, I think it would be self-defeating. And so I think it's important that each of the SEZs that are established, and in particular the one in Atlantis and that we've been discussing, and Saldanha Bay, that we also look at the aspect of incorporating beneficiation. Secondly, Chair, I think in our visit down to the Eastern Cape, we visited the IDZ, SEZ zone in the Eastern Cape. What we discovered was one of the problems of some of the individuals who are coming through to the businesses in that IDZ or SEZ, the young people in particular who actually lacked the skills that the businesses within that particular zone needed. And so I think that the education, when one speaks about whether it be high schools, whether it be your vocational schools, as well as tertiary institutions, there needs to be collaboration in that regard, so that the flow through to those SEZs, IDZs, the flow through is, in terms of skills, the requisite skills, is already there. And then thirdly, I think in terms of collaboration, in the previous administration, what we found was one of the weak links was local government. So when one speaks of the different spheres of government collaborating together so that one is not working in silos, or the different departments not working in silos, it was found that local government was essentially the weak link. And we found the same thing in our visit down to the Eastern Cape, where local government is not able to provide either the infrastructure or even the necessary water, electricity, constant water, electricity to the SEZs, and this obviously compounds challenges that they already find. So I think it's important that these be highlighted to ensure that we work together to build communities and an economy that is resilient and strong, as we also focus on the SEZs and IDZs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Thring. I think that concludes the section. Let's allow maybe National Treasury, because many of the questions seem to come on your side, and then the other two colleagues will also come in. And these are the concluding remarks, not more than 5 minutes each, colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think there are a few points about austerity that have been made by yourself and others. I mean, the minister did say last year at his budget that this isn't an austerity budget. Social expenditure is increasing. We are expanding our proportion of the budget that goes to social uses, we don't agree with the view that it is an austerity budget. We do believe we are creating the economic profile and economic trajectory to create more jobs, to increase investment, and to improve our manufacturing. So we do have a disagreement in our views there. We are happy to engage on this policy, as we said earlier, so we will do that. This can be the start of this engagement. I must note my particular concern at the DTIC official who says that he has been telling companies that they will get the lower tax rate in the new SEZs. Whereas we have a clear statement from the minister that there was no intention to assign the additional tax incentives to those SEZs. So it's creating confusion in the investment community if DTIC officials are promising a tax incentive that wasn't going to be there. So I would request that we do stop that. We need to have as a lot of the members have said, we need to have a coherent approach and holistic approach here, and then it does look like we need to get on the same page between the departments. So we'd be happy to have a bit more of those discussions. I think there were a lot of other comments to us, which we can take in writing if we need to, but I might not be the best as the DDG of Tax and Financial Sector Policy to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Western Cape, if there's any issue you want to raise?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there were any more questions directed at the Western Cape government. If you correct me there, I'm happy to respond.
We ask you that in the approved budget for the 2SEZ, that how much is there? So we want to determine whether or not it's still a continuation of what we are raising with National Treasury, with the provincial government.
Chair, my colleague Mr. Abrams can confirm on Atlantis SEZ, which he's the oversight official for. I'm the oversight official for Saldanha, and the budget is 31.8 million rand operational funding for this year, with some other project money on green hydrogen to the extent of 1.4 million.
Okay, that's for capital expenditure. There is no provision made.
Chair, the provincial government has never funded capital in the SEZs. There was one exemption a few years ago where a piece of property was purchased, but the capital expenditure is DTIC domain.
Okay, Atlantis.
Thank you, Chairperson. The budget for the financial year is 41,534,000, and that's operational funding.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then the last is DTIC. Yeah, DG, you can come in. I can see you. I can see your hand.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair, and with apologies. Chair, there were a couple of questions that were raised in terms of the department's assessment of the extent to which austerity may or may not have led to certain outcomes. I think, Chair, we will ask that the department be afforded the opportunity to provide a more nuanced and considered answer. Suffice to say that the general view might indeed be that has been the outcome, to the extent that there can be a direct linkage between spending and the outcomes economically. There's just one thing that I do want to say, and not abusing this platform, and with apology to Chair and the members, I think I take umbrage to the department being directed as it is, that it must stop selling incentives, as though it does so irresponsibly and without the correct outlook. In fact, Chair, I was responsible for executing TASES. And in that responsibility, we actually decided to stop selling those initiatives. We are lending investments without National Treasury support. And what national treasuries needs to be saying is what support are they providing? The department's allocations are being cut, tax incentives that are proven to work everywhere else in the world are being withheld. And then this platform is used to issue departmental instructions in what I find to be inappropriate, and will address with the department independently out of this meeting, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It was indeed unfortunate. I didn't expect it. And we've tried in this portfolio committee to preserve decorum, even when we disagree, even from different political parties, because we understand that every view on the table has to be entertained. And to simply just get dismissed when people are, because we are raising this point, and we will raise it with the minister, probably write to him, because I don't think that we have been treated fairly as a portfolio. We have a full responsibility in the Constitution to ensure oversight. And oversight is not just to ask questions, it's to also make suggestions. All what we are asking for in this instance is that let's open up a platform to engage so that we have a single platform. And we're using two examples. Firstly, that we have the study by the World Bank now. Let it be presented, let all the parties be there. That's the first thing. Secondly, we're saying there's a new industrial policy that has been approved by Cabinet. And taking into consideration what has been proposed and what we've gone through, it will almost be impossible for this industrial policy of the country. It's not an industrial policy of the DTIC. It will be impossible without National Treasury's cooperation. So we do need to set a platform at the ministerial level, at the DG's level, at the joint portfolio committees level, so that we can be together in terms of how we must move forward. So I think that should be the approach. We will obviously continue to make follow-ups with regard to all the issues, just to make sure that we are holding the executive to account on all those issues. And when you come to Parliament, colleagues, all of you, you must come here with an open, sober mind. You are going to be engaged here. We've not degenerated to undermine the officials, because we respect them and we understand the role they play. We also don't want to start to assume that we are going to be undermined. We're not walkovers. We are leaders in our own right. We are duly elected. So there has to be decorum and respect from everybody. With those few words, the meeting is officially closed. And then I would want to request the colleagues with Portfolio Committee just for another 5 minutes to remain. There's just one business of the portfolio we need to conclude, and then allow all other comrades to leave the platform. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned for that purpose, and we will continue with the second leg of the meeting. Andre, you will tell me in the next 2 minutes.
Correct, Chair. But Mr. Khoza raised his hand, Chair. I don't know if it's in relation to anything prior.
No, the meeting, then I've summarized now. The meeting is closed. He will raise his hand. Yeah.
For the other matters, Chair. Thanks. We just
Thank you,
request
Chair.
all members to remain on the platform. That's quite important.
Yes, I've asked the members to remain just for 5 minutes or less. Can I proceed now, Andre?
Chair, you may proceed, Chair. We can proceed with the next item, committee business, Chair.
Colleagues, just two items. Let me start with the one that is directly linked to my issue. I'm requesting that we elect the chairperson, the acting chairperson. I will join the meeting tomorrow, but say around 10:10, and the meeting will start early, and it's almost impossible for me to join. So I wanted to we get to elect just a member who's going to act as soon as I join the meeting tomorrow. Then we will proceed from there. If I can be assisted.
Mr.
Yes,
Manduli raised his hand, Chair, and Mr. Khoza raised his hand, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Khoza, you were first. You can proceed. Mr. Manduli will be next.
No, thanks, Chair. I wanted to check before you adjourn, but you've given a directive that maybe perhaps we can meet after the officials have left to discuss the kind of attitude that we are getting. And maybe perhaps we need to have a way forward in terms of addressing such, but I think we'll address it here.
Okay.
And then
Point taken.
Yes, Chair. And then second, with regards to what we've just raised now, I propose that, or rather, I nominate the name of Dr. Kikaba to chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Second us for the name of Dr. Kikaba.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to second that. I was actually meant to propose, but then it's fine. I second that, Chair.
Second. Chair, can we ask if Dr. Kikaba is available, Chair?
Dr. Kikaba, are you available?
Will I also be allowed to make an acceptance speech?
Yes, please.
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chair,
Andre, quickly. Yes, the second item on
is the study tour, Chair. Quick, if I may.
Please. Yes.
Chair, just to members, we didn't formally communicate with members because we didn't have all the approvals finalized, and the last approval was finalized on the 4th, which we received on the 5th. As a committee was aware that we submitted an application to go undertake a study tour to Japan during the week of leaving on the 12th of June. But because we received the application late on the 26th of May approval, the embassy in Japan requested that we postpone the study visit because they need a lead time of at least 4 weeks to finalize a program. And the chair then agreed that we resubmit a request to the chief whip, the house chairperson, and the speaker to undertake the study visit at the end of June, meaning we depart on the 26th of June and return on the 3rd of July. We received that approval on Thursday evening, that the speaker has granted that approval. And as when we last had a discussion about membership, the following members were identified to travel. Chair, if I can announce, is the chair who will lead the delegation, is Mr. Mkutu, is Ms. Motukatsi, is Mr. Chons, Mr. Koza, and Mr. Langa. At the time, just to give context, Mr. Gama at the time indicated that he was not available to travel. And at the time, Mr. Nshingila, who was late, was the alternate member and who was not able to travel. Hence, Mr. Langa joined the delegation. Now, Chair, we have submitted the note verbal to the DIRCO. Once we have the note verbal, we get it back, we will then communicate to members regarding the visa application that must happen. As I mentioned this morning to Chair, we'll probably create a study tour WhatsApp group. We will communicate these matters. Chair, also, when we met with Japan yesterday, they emphasized the importance of members having their business cards. That is a vital thing for the Japanese, that members have business cards. So members will Yvonne has sent a form to members. Please, members, we urge you to urgently complete that form that we can ensure that members have the necessary business cards with them when we do travel to Japan. So, but as I indicated, we will communicate either late tomorrow afternoon to members in terms of the visa application process and any matters further relating to the study tour, if that's in order, Chair. Chair, Mr. Mduli raised his hand.
Yes, Ma'am Mduli.
Oh, no, sorry. It was an old hand, Chair. Not bad. Okay. Let me lower that.
Okay. Colleagues, here's the clarity on the study tour. Are all members confirmed? And we had agreed that we will break our team into two, and then the next study tour will then make sure that the other members also participate.
Mr. Koza, Chair? Sorry, my apologies, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Koza.
Thanks, Chair. I think on my side, we're fine. We're agreeing with the proposed dates, and on the business cards, We've already corresponded with Yvonne. We've submitted our details. Then I think it will be processed accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other suggestion, members?
Mr. Nkosi, Chair.
Honorable Nkosi.
Yes, quick question, Chair. Obviously, as a new member, I don't have I don't have background, but
Oh, sorry.
who's laughing?
What's happening now? What is this, Chair?
Mr. Nkosi, may I proceed, Chair?
We'll end up hearing stings here, Chair. Can members be when Parliament?
Chief, this is a formal meeting, Chief. It's just a mistake. Can you please come in?
Sure. I just wanted to find out, Chair, obviously as a new member, I heard the report that obviously one of our members who was indisposed was not able to travel, and obviously Honorable Gama as well had expressed that. Does it mean that there would be another study tour where the MK party would be able to participate in?
Yes, there will be. All members will participate throughout. We because of the budget, we couldn't take everybody. The idea was to
At the
take
same
all
time.
the members
Okay.
of the committee. So we're just breaking it into two throughout.
Okay, noted. Thanks,
Okay.
Chair.
And then the last issue to dispose, colleagues, Andre, when we changed the meeting from physical to virtual, because there was a long chat between me and Member Chance last night. I just wanted to clarify how we normally do things so that we can close this matter. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Chair has requested to go about a week ago, more than a week ago, that we schedule the meeting on a virtual platform. And there was a mission on my part. There's no excuse. We just failed to communicate that, although it was on the Z list, Chair, we didn't communicate to members. And so we undertake in future that we communicate clearly and early to members about any changes in whether it's virtual or physical, so that members don't plan accordingly, and when it's virtual, there's challenges with that regard. So it was a administrative error on our side, Chair. No intention to compromise anyone in the process, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. But all the necessary approvals were done to make sure that it's done. Okay, no. I think
Chair?
apologies accepted. Yes.
Chair, also just to remind members that we will start the meeting, because of the number of stakeholders attending, we start the meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock, but we'll also communicate that on the WhatsApp group, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think with all those matters, colleagues, we can then officially adjourn the meeting. Apologies for the confusion, but I think we must, in our next meeting, discuss this issue of the attitude. I fully agree. I think it just needs us, probably even in a physical meeting, just to reflect on it, because it was not in the way in which we do things. We'll be unable next time to call you to order when you are, getting off tangent and doing things the way, and we've tried to avoid that in the committee. Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is officially adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Recording stopped.